Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, do we have a great show for you. I want to tell you something that I spoke to my college students in my culture and diversity class several years ago when I was teaching C&D, and I would tell them, if you want to enhance your career, elevate your ability as a speaker. Be able to speak in front of more people. If you want to level up in your career and you're going, well, how can I make more money in my career? Become a better speaker. I'm not saying it's simple, but it is an easy add-on if you're willing to do, as my guest is going to say, Gabe Zichermann, as he's going to say, it's an easy add-on if you're willing to do the work. Mm-hmm. Okay? But it is a great add-on for your career. And here's the beauty about his book, The AHA Method. Maybe I should say it this way, the AHA Method, because there's an exclamation point there. Here's the beauty. This book, in my opinion, and I've had people who've talked about public speaking before. I am a professional public speaker, just like my friend Gabe is. And here's the thing. I'm going to tell you. This book, in my opinion, is the most comprehensive guide to public speaking in all forms, whether it is to become a professional speaker, whether you want to make a better sales pitch, whether you want to lead a better meeting, or you just want to be better in person. This is the comprehensive guide. The comprehensive guide right here. You don't have to look anywhere else. He has hit it all. And by the way, the detail in this book is so amazing that literally, and you know me, I'm a psychological professional. I love talking about cognitive biases. This guy not only points them out, he tells you how to use them to your advantage. And we're probably going to get into a few of those today. All right, before we get to Gabe, because I know you're all excited, right? Before we get to him, this is what we do. Every week we talk about how are you doing in the 4 areas of your life, right? We're 4-part people: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people, right? And the fact of the matter is, if we're not growing, we're dying, because we never stay static, right? By the way, Gabe will tell you that, you know what? Physically, there is some conditioning involved when you want to be a better speaker. You have got to take care of your body. You got to here's some ideas. So scale of 1 to 10, how would you value yourself this way physically? Exercise, eating right, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water. By the way, you want to improve yourself as a public speaker, all 4 of those things are good. So scale of 1 to 10, 5 being average, how would you say you're doing there? Now look, whatever your number is for each one of these scales on a scale of 1 to 10, don't get alarmed. I'm not trying to, nobody's trying to go, oh my God, you're only 2. No. I'm a 2. How do I get to myself to 2.5? Not a 10. I just want to get myself a little bit better, right? Because if you could do 1% a day, by the way, 72 days, you're 100%. Or something like that, some weird number. Maybe it's number 26. I don't even know what it is anymore, right? So first number. Second number is your intellectual mental number, right? You cannot have a book like this and go, if I put it up against my head, somehow I'm going to absorb the information. You actually have to get in there, dig into it, read it. It's what you have to do. You have to be an active participant in your mental growth and knowledge and wisdom in your job, in your career, in your life. You have to be that active participant. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you doing in growing in your knowledge and understanding and wisdom when it comes to your career and your life? Right? 5 being average. Okay, it's 2 numbers. Third number, emotional number. Gabe talks about it again, right? Says, listen, you're going to have empathy for your audience, which is part of your emotional number. Because the first part is, how well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure? By the way, if you're going to speak in public, you better learn how to control your emotions under stress and pressure. Because not everything is going to go your way. Gabe and I can tell you that we've gone in front of audiences. We've had everything prepared. Everything seems right. And then I was in Vegas. I'll never forget it. I'm in Vegas and they have the thumb drive. Everything is working. And then they go, by the way, we're out. We can't work the thumb drive for your presentation. And I was like, okay, you know what? I don't need to have videos. You know why? I don't need the slide presentation because I can describe verbally what I'm doing. And you move on. Guess what? You got to have emotional control. The second part of that, though, is how well you're able to tap into and understand the emotions of other people. By the way, you don't think that's important when you're speaking to people in public? It's called empathy. Read your audience, right? That's all part of emotional, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing emotionally? Controlling your emotions under pressure and reading and being able to read and understand others. Okay, that's third number. Fourth number, that's spiritual number. By the way, we all want to connect with each other spiritually. It's part of our connection to each other. There's a spiritual connection that goes beyond the mental, the emotional, and the physical. We have a spiritual connection where we connect to one another. When you're speaking in front of people, there is a spiritual thing that happens between us where we are connected, right? And there is no other explanation. But the fact of the matter is we all live by faith, by the way. You drank your cup of coffee, believed it wasn't poisonous. You pushed your button on your car, believed it was going to start. You made plans for the future, believing they're going to happen. You went across the crosswalk when it said walk, believing nobody was going to hit you. We all live by faith every single day. By the way, we just do. We have a human spirit that wants and desires to connect to others beyond our physical self, right? The fact is we're spiritual. And by the way, what brings you back to centeredness in the midst of your chaos? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it meditation? Is it something else? And is it working? Right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say that's going for you? Those 4 areas are like the air in a tire of your car. If one of the tires is too low, what happens? Oh, it's hard to steer the car. If all 4 tires are low, over time, the car's just not going to survive. So we want to bring him up to the right height. And speaking of somebody who does that, his name is Gabe Zichermann. He is an entrepreneur, author, investor, and leader whose books, speeches, and workshops focus on gamification, behavioral design. He spoke at companies such as Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon. They've adopted Gabe's theories and practices, leading to significant revenue increases over time. He's a frequent keynote speaker and speaking coach. He's helped hundreds, if not thousands, of successful entrepreneurs, executives, and celebrities communicate beautifully in all settings. His new book is The AHA Method, communicating powerfully in a time of distraction. You can learn more by going to GabeZichermann.com. That's GabeZichermann.com. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show. Welcome to the first time ever, Gabe Zichermann. Welcome to A New Direction, Gabe.
Thanks, Jay. I'm excited to be here and honestly thrilled by your energy. Your energy never ceases to excite me.
Well, good. Well, I'm energized because the book's energizing. All right.
Thank you.
So let's just start chapter 1. What to expect. And when you're expected to speak beautifully is the title of chapter 1. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about speaking. Yeah. Because when I don't think we think about improving our speaking ability as part of our career and how that can actually help us. Because I think oftentimes, like you're a professional public speaker. This is your profession. This is what you do. This is how you make money. And of course you coach and do some other things, but a lot of people, that's not what they do. But the speaking can improve any career. So help us understand why and how that can work so that we can fit this all together and what to expect.
Yeah, I didn't start off as a professional public speaker. Like that wasn't my first job. I started off, doing marketing things. I was kind of a nerd. And, from the earliest age I can remember, one of the things that didn't bug me was getting up in front of people and speaking. So if I didn't do the homework and the teacher happened to call on me, I was not the kid dying inside, worried that I was going to look like an idiot, because I could kind of improvise and say something, as long as I knew something about the topic. And so it was never hard for me to get up on stage. But what I did over time, once I got into professional life, was I started to notice that many people who were in positions of power didn't want to do that work. So
Mhm.
first things first, they didn't want to get up on stage. And every time they turned down an opportunity to get up on stage, they were creating an opportunity for a more junior person to say, oh, let me do that. Well, it's important for us, right? We need to do it, so I'll do it. And what I was very good at was seeing those opportunities and taking them as they came. So in my first corporate jobs, anytime there was an opportunity to go to a conference or speak on something, and it was passed up by the by management, I was like, sure, I'll do it. Why not? I'm happy to do it. I'll even fly coach, because I was young, and back then that was fine. And so I started to do it, and over the course of the first 10 to let's say 10 to 12 years of my career, it was just something that I was doing as part of the other work that I was doing as part of the marketing guy, as the marketing guy, as the strategy guy, whatever it was. And then I co-founded a company in the video game industry called Trimedia, which was the first really successful platform for video game distribution. It's a weird idea, but when we started the company, it wasn't possible to legally download a video game and play it. So the tech we built was kind of the precursor to Steam, if your listeners are listening to that. So we built this company. Eventually, we sold it for a bunch of money, and it was very successful. But my co-founders in that venture, the CEO of that company, Alex, who's a brilliant, wonderful man, he was like, I do not want to be out in public. I have no interest in being out in public. I don't want to ever speak. And I was like, okay, I'm the sales and marketing guy. I'll do it. Right. And so I found myself, and I would just started taking every opportunity I got. And you know what I realized really quickly, Jay? This is well before I ever got paid for it. What I realized really quickly was every time I'd get up on stage and say something, somebody would buy something from me.
Mm.
Every single time,
Mm.
even if it was just a meeting, right? I was closing a deal, I was getting a sale, I was getting at least 5 leads at every speech, no matter how big or small it was, for my company that I want to sell. And then eventually it became obvious that I was also getting leads for me, because people would come and they'd say, oh, I saw you speak at event A. Would you like to come and speak at event B? That would be a great topic for you to do. And it started off with panels, and then and every time I just said yes, and every opportunity that came along, I said yes, and yes, and yes, and. And so over the course of the first 10 or 12 years in my professional life, I did an outsized amount of talks, and I saw a lot of great people and a lot of terrible people do talks. And I did every kind of conference that you can possibly imagine, every kind of talk you can possibly imagine. And it became this massive snowball effect. And so as I tell people, whether I'm coaching them or talking to them about, the work or the philosophy of public speaking, there is no more powerful personal credibility technique that ultimately results in raises, promotions, sales, money being thrown at you one way or the other. There's no more powerful thing than being able to get up on stage. And part of that is because people are definitely afraid of doing it. So they look at you and they just think, you must have a superpower because you can get up and talk in front of other people. And I'll be the first person to tell you, like, it's not a superpower. It's literally just work.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody can do it. You just have to put the work in.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld had a humorous line years ago. In psychology, we have the things that cause the most stress, right? The stressors, and it's interesting that people fear public speaking more than they fear dying. And
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld used to say, "So that means it would be better to be in the casket than to do the eulogy." Which
Yeah.
is often really 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 true. Right?
Yeah.
Because there is for a lot of people. And by the way, I think you and I need to, as people who professionally speak in stage, and we've spoke before thousands of people, I think we also need to tell people it's not that we don't feel a little nerves or anxious.
Oh,
I feel them
yeah.
all. And by the way, I'm more frightened if I don't feel them.
Yes, right. That's right. I say that to people too. I think you're a sociopath if you don't feel something when you've been entrusted. I mean, well, okay. So I'm not saying you're a sociopath or anyone's a
No, I
sociopath,
get
but
it.
just, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's mildly sociopathic
Yeah.
to be given the opportunity to influence a room full of people who've given you their time. They've given up as 15 minutes, or they've given up an hour of their life with the open minds, most of them with open minds are sitting there listening to you, open to hearing what you have to say. You would have to be a sociopath to not care about whether or not they get the message that you invested all that time and energy in putting down, to not care whether or not they get any benefit out of the time they've invested in you and the time they've committed to you. So professional public speakers, I think you were getting at this. I'm nervous before every talk. I'm not nervous that I'm going to forget what I have to say.
Right.
I'm only nervous about the audience picking up what I'm putting down.
Yep.
That's what I care about. Do they get the value from the time they've given me? That's all I care about. I'm not worried about my performance necessarily. I mean, in that anxious way.
No, not in that anxious way. It's more about, right. It's more about, am I going to deliver something that they're going to connect with? That is my biggest concern, right? Because I've done all the work, right? I mean, yeah, I get it. So let's talk some detail.
And wait, just one thing I just want to add to that, because I think you're like onto something really super important. And so part of the reason for writing the AHA method was my observation that many people, and it's no knock on Toastmasters or any other organization, but many of those organizations where people go to try to get over their fear of public speaking, they focus so much on the least relevant details.
Right.
Like they're really preoccupied with not saying or ah, or, misstating a particular word, when that is not the priority. Like the content and the like authentic delivery of the content is literally the only thing that matters. And like, all these other things, like no audience ever remembers how many ums or ahs you said in a speech. Then what they'll remember is whether or not you delivered something that changed their life or not. That's all they remember. So that's part of what the impetus was here.
Yeah, well, let's go there, because you do have a section here devoted to, the traditional way that we teach communication and the traditional way that most people go about working on speaking or becoming a better speaker is traditionally, that we've used education, right? I remember the communication class, public speaking class, sure. Everybody remembers that. And then, of course, Toastmasters. And, again, we're not trying to bash Toastmasters, but there are some weaknesses in the programs that we just have to call out, because you can pay for, there are professional people out there who command hundreds of thousands of dollars per talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I'm not going to mention any names, but they have ums and ahs.
Yeah.
And they're still getting paid $100,000 a talk.
That's right.
And so what happens is I've said this about public speaking. Oftentimes we major on the minors and minor on the majors.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Right.
I think it's because it gives people a false sense of control. My take on it is that, if I can just get rid of the ums, then I feel like I'm in control. But I'm struck by, and I was struck by in prior to reading, writing this book in the first place, was, going to, for example, like this, doing a TEDx where they had invested a lot of energy in the speakers. There were a lot of not first-time speakers, but kind of early stage speakers. And they had been coached by fantastic coaches, and they all sounded the same.
Mm-hmm.
They got up on stage and they were using the same story structure. They were using the same meter, the same tone, the same pacing. And I was like, okay, well, you're not going to stand out. Like, none of these people are going to stand out, because what I read as an audience member at the beginning is like not especially authentic,
Yeah.
And you look at some of the top rated, talks, and many of them are really like, are the most watched talks, the ones that certainly get the most attention. They're at their core about authenticity and about content, and not really about polish on any of the other topics. So I include all of those things in the book, you know what I mean, as part of the conversation. But I don't write like 3 chapters on how to remove your ums, or,
No.
like I'll give you another example. I talk a lot about speaking speed.
Yes.
In the book. Which, by the way, for everyone listening who did speech and debate, like everything you're doing on the speech and debate stage is bad for professional public speaking. Like, do not speak 250 words a minute. Like, when I watch college or high school speech and debate, I'm like, what are you teaching people to? Anyway, it's a different story. But so the average, like a fast talker talks at about 175 words a minute. So when I tell people, like, what's important about the speed of talking, don't speak at 250 words a minute.
Right.
But other than that, as long as you're modulating your speed appropriately, so it's not all being delivered at one exact speed all the time, so it just sounds like one monotonous flow of words that aren't distinguishable from the other, you are going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like, so hopefully that gives people a little bit more confidence, but allows them to invest the energy where they need to, which is the content.
This is going to be so much fun. I can't wait to do the rest of this hour because we're going to have a blast together. I could feel it, that we got great energy and we got a great spiritual connection going on here. His name is Gabe Zichermann, and the book is entitled The AHA Method, Communicating Powerfully in a Time of Distraction. We're just getting started. You're joining us here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, Epic Physical Therapy. My physical therapists think they should be yours too, by the way. Whether you're recovering from an injury, surgery, suffering from everyday aches and pains, maybe having difficulty performing everyday activities, maybe you're a professional athlete or wannabe athlete who wants to just move and feel better. Listen, the elite team at Epic Physical Therapy will custom make a program just specifically for you. It is not physical therapy in a box. So when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, don't go any further. Go to epicpt.com. It's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors. Listen, for 39 years, they've been helping people all over the world transition in life. Wait, what? What do you mean transition in life? They do real estate, right? Think about it. Every place you ever lived has been a life transition, hasn't it? Right? First apartment, first house, life transition. Move up, move down, life transition, right? Well, they know how to take the stress out of that portion of that real estate process, right? So they help people transition in life. So listen, when you're ready to make your next life transition, whether it's sell a house, buy a house, whatever that may be, start with Linda Craft Team Realtors, right? It's lindacraft.com. It's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Gabe Zichermann. The book, here it is, The AHA Method, Communicating Powerfully in Time of Distraction. By the way, folks, I said it earlier in the show, it is the most comprehensive guide in public speaking. I don't care if you want to be a public speaker. I don't care if you are a salesperson. I don't care if you are a CEO. You need this book. The details that Gabe has written in this book are going to help you be a better salesperson. They're going to help you connect better with your next meeting. I'm just telling you, the details are there, and it's so well written, and he's done such an amazing job. You need to get yourself a copy of this book. Available at Amazon, wherever books are sold. I promise you to do that if they're there. All right, so Gabe, there's a basic framework that you start off with here in chapter 1, deadlines, iteration, practice, and reviews. And you say in this part, so the best idea for making the concepts of the AHA method work for you is to ensure that you're working towards something you actually want to do and would like to deliver. Expand on that for us a little bit as we build out this framework of deadlines, iteration, or DIPPER, whatever we want to call it.
Okay, so basically, like, at the core, the simple way of thinking about that is, I don't think like classroom instruction is the way to learn to be a better speaker. I think you have to do it. So what I tell everybody, I don't coach a lot of people. Like, my coaching clients are, like one of the sharks on Shark Tank, people like that mostly. So I kind of limit my coaching clients to a smaller group of people. But with everybody that I do coach in person, when I do it, I'm always like, okay, well, what talk are we working towards? And we need to have something, we need to have a stake in the ground that we're building towards, because that constraint will actually enable us to be our most creative and our best possible selves. And we're going to have to iterate a ton in order to get from the thoughts and ideas that are in your head to something that's really worthy for whatever stage it is that you're planning on performing. So, in my case, I'm just working a new talk right now. I'm going to go do a new TED talk. And, I'm literally, I've got the date, I've got the delivery dates, I've got all these dates in my calendar by which I need to deliver the talk at various stages of completion. And I am iteratively and the book talks about this iterative or agile approach, I'm iteratively working towards those delivery ideas. But I have a stake in the ground. I know what I'm aiming towards. And this is going to be slightly intimidating for most people, but when I've gotten up on stage to give a talk, I have at least done 20 to 30 full length versions of that talk out loud before that. And even if it's a talk that I've done before almost in its entirety, I've probably done half a dozen to 10 practice runs of the
Easily.
talk before getting up on there. So you like at the very beginning, I like to cut coaching clients out by telling them up front, like, you're going to have to do 20 versions. You're going to have to do 20 iterations of this if it's a brand new talk, at least. And you'd be surprised how many like high-powered CEOs then walk from the conversation looking for something easier. And it's like, okay, well then, that's not, I am team, you got to put the work in. So that's why I set this up at the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, and I think, as you talk, well, because it goes into the importance of process versus structure, which you talk about is because you basically say, no matter how many tips, tricks, hacks I show you, if you aren't willing to do the work, you're going to have difficulty being excellent at public speaking and pitching. And I think here's the thing, people who are listening to the show may be going or watching the show. By the way, thank you for watching us on DBTV, wherever you're watching us from. Appreciate that. But I think people are going, okay, well, Gabe, that's fine for a public speaker, but you know what? I'm just a salesperson. I'm just in front. I don't need to be practicing my sales talk over and over again, or I don't need to be doing my sales. I'm B2B and I got to do my sales. I don't need to be practicing that over and over again. Gabe, and that meeting that I do every Wednesday, I don't need to be practicing that, man. I don't need to, right? I mean, they've got an agenda. Why do I need? And Gabe says what to that?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I raised several $1 million from billionaire Peter Thiel for a startup that I was working on. And prior to going in and raising this money from Peter, and I've raised lots of money over the years and sold lots of stuff to lots of people. You can read my bio. And before going into this meeting with Peter, at this point, I've had several startups. I've exited, I've, raised a bunch of money. I have a reputation. I've written several books. Like we're coming in real warm. One of the other partners wants to, do the deal. And in preparation for this meeting, we did a session with an external venture capitalist, somebody I'd never met before, who was a total asshole. Okay. There's no other way to describe it. Sorry for using that language. He was just a jerk, like a big time jerk. And we had the world's most awkward, difficult conversation, more difficult than divorce. And I had a couple of those. So it was a tough conversation. And afterwards, once I had an opportunity to calm down, my co-founder, who was new to the process, he was like, that guy was such a jerk. I can't believe it. Like, why did they put us through this? And I was like, what are you talking about? That was the best thing that has ever happened. And he was just absolutely flummoxed by it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, we just got the platinum level prep. Okay. We're going in and pitching literally one of the world's wealthiest people, one of the world's smartest. You can argue Peter's got his own stuff, but clearly one of the smartest, most prescient investors, one of the richest people in the world. His imprimatur, his signature on that deal brings us lots of things that we want. I'm going to do everything I can to prepare for that meeting. Now, you might be listening to that and saying, and by the way, raise the money, and Peter's amazing in a meeting, by the way, comes prepared, very thoughtful, never distracted, which is, you can't say for any of your audiences. Your audiences will never be as focused as Peter was in that meeting. But one thing that I'll say is, you'll say, okay, well, my meetings are not that big of a deal. I'm not raising that much money, blah, blah, blah. It's not that important. And it's like, well, if you phone it in, you'll get the result. You'll get exactly the results for the effort that you put into that work. So I'm not saying you should prepare for every meeting or every speech at the level of going through the full ringer. Like I told you, when I'm doing a new speech, I'm doing 20 to 30 iterations. When I'm doing a speech that I already know, maybe it's half a dozen. But the point is, you go in unprepared, that's at your own peril. You go in phoning it in, it's at your own peril. Like, Don't waste opportunities that are being given to you. Treat every single one of them as categorical. And I know we're going to get to this later in the conversation, but I do have this whole chapter about hygiene
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and talking, right, sleep and eating and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And I'll say it now, and we'll say it again later. In order to be your best at this work, you have to treat those speeches, you've got to treat those meetings, you've got to treat those pitches like they are the most important thing you will do all day. They are the focus, they are the priority. Like when you wedge in a major pitch or speech in between two other like high stress activities, what kind of energy and priority are you giving it? What are you expecting to get out of that? What's
Uh,
your thought process?
you're
Like,
absolutely right. I say this about the show, right? I tell people, I go, well, first of all, I read every book from cover to cover. That's the first part of the show.
mhm.
Then I go back through the book again and I take notes from the book that I write down that are in
Yep.
front of me right here,
I've
right?
seen your notes, your
And
defiling notes.
and then I go over those notes and try to pick out for the listening audience what I think is most relevant, but then what I think is might be the most interesting because I have a TV audience, I have a radio audience, and then I have a podcast audience. Right. So and some of them are the same, but some of them are very different.
Sure.
And I tell people it's an hour show, but you have to be constantly practicing and working. So even before the show is starting, I'm thinking as I'm reading the book, I'm thinking out loud to myself, how am I going to open the show? What am I going to say about this book? What is the opening to the book that I want to do? How do I want to open this up? Because as you say, right, probably the first thing that comes out of your mouth and the last thing that comes out of your mouth, right, which we call primacy and recency effect in psychology, are going to be two of the most important things that you have to say. So first impressions are first impressions. I got my first impression out, high energy, right?
Yeah.
Because I want you to be energized. I want the people who are listening to the show to be energized. And you preach this.
Yeah. I call it my like rock star framing. And I use the example, rock stars, people like to think of rock stars, I guess, as like kind of hedonists, but when you actually like go under the covers and look at really successful live performers in music, they're generally incredibly disciplined and their days are really structured and really rigid while they're on tour. And the reason for that is they want to give the best performance they can, and people have paid a lot of money and they need to conserve all of their energy and put all of their energy towards the performance. So like, for Beyonce, every minute of the day from the moment she wakes up on a tour day is tightly scripted and tightly coordinated and managed so that she's able to conserve her energy and be in the best fighting shape she can be for that presentation, for that performance, which is, definitive for the people in the room. And she's already been paid, right? We don't, as public speakers, if you're getting paid, you don't get paid until after. So just saying. So she's structuring everything that way. And I'm like, if you want to make the most of this opportunity, you too need to have that perspective about your day.
Right.
Like you too need to have that perspective about your energy. I see people spending a whole day at a conference, like doing meetings, talking to everyone, and then they've got a 4 p.m. presentation and they roll right from, all day social engagement, lunch, meetings into this presentation at 4 p.m. And you know what? There's a reason why the 4 p.m. slot sucks most of the time at most conferences. And it's not because the audience that's in the room doesn't want to hear a speech. They could be doing anything at 4 o'clock. They don't have to sit in that room listening to you. It's because the speakers, generally speaking, don't come in with the right energy level. So you've got to treat that speech, pitch, or meeting with the importance that it actually deserves. And that means aligning everything, aligning your time around that. If you're not willing to do it, don't do it. But then don't do it. Like, just don't even do it,
Yeah. I think it kind of falls into chapter 2 is, everything you know about communication is wrong. is your title, right? And what we're talking about here is the very first subtitle you have in that chapter 2, and that is every talk is a pitch.
Yep.
Everything and everyone is trying to pitch you or you're trying to pitch them. Everything.
Absolutely.
And
every interaction with somebody.
Yeah. And so why would we not want to improve our speaking ability? It just makes so much more sense that we would want to go the best way to improve your sales percentage, the best way to improve your ability to communicate to your staff or your team, the best way to have a meeting that actually is functional, improve your speaking ability. And
Yeah,
yet,
that's right.
we ignore that for other things. I know you've seen it
Well,
because you
yeah,
coach.
of course. Yeah, we ignore it for other things because we think other things might be, more important or equally important. But also, when I talk about this in chapter 2, it's like people are super distracted now. And so part of the other impetus for writing the AHA method was making sure that speakers and people who are trying to command meetings are conscious of the fact that distraction is now a part of the equation. And so you can't take the audience's long-term attention for granted. And you need to have a frame of reference, a structure for the way that you communicate that assumes that people are not going to be paying attention to you for the total amount of time that they've allocated to listening to you. So you got to start from there. If you start from any other base assumption,
Mm,
you're already off on the wrong foot, right? And
right.
then the layered in part of that is you've got to earn their continued attention. So they'll give you some small chunk of attention is given to you as credit just by virtue of the fact that they're there, you're on a stage, or you're leading the meeting, whatever. You've got a short period of time to hook them, get there, establish that that's going to be valuable, and then you have to consider that during the rest of the time frame that you've got them, they're not going to be able to pay equal and continuous attention to you throughout that time period. So if you've got important things that you need to convey, which hopefully you have a handful of key things that you want to say, you've got to consciously think about the attentionality of the audience and deliver that in an attenuated fashion so that they're able to pick up what you're putting down. And we'll talk, I'm sure we'll talk about this some more, but one of the biggest, most obvious things is like, if you say something really super important and meaningful, this aha moment that's in the title of the book, you got to give people a few seconds to process that thing that you just said.
Mm.
And people will say something really super important and meaningful and then immediately follow with another important and meaningful thing like 2 seconds later. And it's like, whoa, people in the room are still trying to process that amazing thing that you said. So frankly, you got to kind of fill some time. This is when really good speakers, by the way, when they repeat themselves, they say the same thing and they say it 3 times in a row. They're doing several things by doing that, but one of the things they're doing is buying a little bit of time while you process the thing that they said the first time. So like it's like all of this kind of stuff. Like I think it's just the era of what it used to be like when we were kids and we had to sit in a room and listen to a teacher for an hour. Like nobody does that anymore. And frankly, we didn't do that because we were doodling in our notebooks and passing notes and you know drifting off to sleep or whatever we were doing. So it's all like a mythology, right? I don't think anybody ever could sit there for an hour with full rapt attention in the past, but certainly we're not doing that now.
We're going to take a quick early break and then we'll come right back. His name is Gabe Zichermann. The book entitled The AHA Method. I would see how many different ways I could do that. Communicating powerfully in a time, I didn't even do communicating very well there. Communicating powerfully in a time of distraction. The book is fantastic. It is the most comprehensive guide when it comes to improving your career, and that's going to come through speaking. You're joining us here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, listen, Epic Physical Therapy. I want to tell you something. They offer the most advanced, top-of-the-line equipment, including the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill. Try saying that 3 times fast. The Normatec compression sleeves and the Game Ready. That's my favorite. Ice compression all at the same time. Ooh, that's just a few. Listen, they're trained and certified in the most comprehensive, cutting-edge treatments available. Blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping. That's just a few. Listen. If you want your epic relief, you want your epic recovery, you want your epic results, look no further. Go to epicpt.com. It's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors for 39 years, right? They are known as Legends of Customer Service. But I want to tell you something. The Legends of Customer Service right now are hiring new agents. So if you're in the Research Triangle Park area or you're planning on moving into the Research Triangle Park area and you say, hey, I'm a real estate agent, I'm looking for a place to hang my license, talk to the folks at Linda Craft Team Realtors. I am telling you, it is independently owned and operated. They're unaffiliated with any national brand, which is why they know the best agents all over the world. And here's the other thing, right? No desk fees, none, zero. no desk fees. So why not, if you're in real estate and you're looking for a new real estate home, check out Linda Craft Team Realtors. That's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Gabe Zichermann. By the way, just kind of has a songy voice. Communicating powerfully, the AHA method, communicating powerfully in a time of distraction. We didn't get very far into this book, but we're here in the last segment anyway. We're just going to do it. Chapter 3, AHA, the behavioral science of modern communication. And you open up with something. I love psychology because it's my master's and doctoral work is in the feeling that you have when the hair stands up on the back of your neck in response to something you've heard is your peak of intellectual emotional arousal, high state of vibration, high enough that it manifests in your body physically.
Yeah.
Right. So the best speakers, you say, know intuitively or through AHA method training how to include the right number of these points of arousal in a talk, in a meeting, or pitch. So let's talk about the AHA method and training when it comes to these moments. And I think you're probably going to dig into the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Maybe it won't. But I think it all kind of fits together. So help us understand that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the most fascinating things about people, so all animals have that, sympathetic reaction when threatened or something occurs, right? You've seen your dog's hair stand up on the back of its body, right, or the cat. And so it's cutely called piloerection. And so one of the things that I, thought about when I was ruminating on like the talks that have most influenced me, or even just the conversations that have most influenced me, the thing that I realized as I was thinking about this was, I may not remember many details. I'm getting old and, memory spotty in all kinds of ways. But those moments where something really lands with me, like when someone says something that really clicks into the lock, you know what I mean? Where the puzzle pieces just fit together, that produces a physical reaction in my body. And I was not always conscious of that physical reaction, but it definitely does. And one of the most fascinating things about people is that because we have language, that same kind of fight response, fight or flight response that happens in animals in response to threats also happens in us just from language. So even when we're not, actually being threatened by something, or even when we're not, being engaged in that particular way. And it's so powerful. And it's so powerful that, I think what you really need to do as a speaker and as a communicator is think about how you deploy that power appropriately. And so just, in the book, I've got this great chart about the AHA moments of arousal and what they mean. And basically, in a nutshell, you can see the chart on the website or in the book. In a nutshell, you can't really do more than a couple to 3 of those in a 30-minute period. You cannot give people 6 AHA moments in a 30-minute period. It's just too many. You can give them 2 or 3. They need to be spaced out appropriately with enough time between them in order to give people moments to reflect. And especially if you want them to write things down or tweet them out, you definitely need to leave enough time for people to listen, absorb, process, write, and tweet. So you've just got to think about what your goals and objectives are there, but you definitely need to give them enough time. And that, ultimately, like you said, with the start and the end of the talk, you are attempting to, leave them with a few things that they're really going to remember. And those moments plus the start and end are the things that they're going to remember. And so to the sympathetic, parasympathetic, right, that the refractory period that happens after the after the peak of arousal is that period of time where people settle back in and they're able to rest and digest what you said. So it's very similar to that sort of thing. And I'm fascinated by it and I love it. And when I develop talks, and what I encourage people to do when they're developing talks is to explicitly lay out the 2 or 3 things that they're probably like high points in emotional delivery and, design around those.
It's interesting that you say, because you do talk about the power of 3, which is really, by the way, I'm an old time radio fan. I love classic radio and I love the old detective shows. And it's interesting there was always three possible people who could have committed the crime. No more, generally no more than three. There's
Yeah.
only three, right? There's
Yeah.
only three possibilities. It's interesting, the power of three, which I just found interesting. I want to take this aha moment though, something that you say in a meeting. And you say this: to use aha moments in the meeting, you need to do three key things. Think in advance about the goals and objectives, possible objections, and issues you may face during the meeting. Plan a couple of additional aha moments to support your point that you can pull out of your hat whenever you need it. Closely listen to the participants' ahas so you can capture the energy and reinforce what is said. And I think what's important here that I pulled out of this, because we have so many business people, CEOs and entrepreneurs that listen to the show, and C-suite professionals and salespeople. I think what I want them to understand is, please, please, please listen to what Gabe is saying. Prepare, prepare, and practice and practice. Doesn't matter how small the meeting is or how small the engagement is. It's too dang important. Can I overemphasize that enough?
No, I think you got it. I think you got it down pretty well. But actually, I will say one other thing about meetings, which can get lost in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So if there's not going to be some moment of not revelation, but like an aha moment or some moment of that's like really life changing, even if it's small in that meeting, like why are we having the meeting in the first place? What is its kind of raison d'etre, what is its purpose, and why are we doing it? So one thing that I always want to encourage, even if you don't think you've got something like that, if you're an executive or a leader, you've probably got a list of things running in the back of your head that you'd really love the organization to kind of get to work on, do better at, see about the future, engage around or be with. Have that list at the ready. So if you're, in every meeting that you do, regardless of, even if it's just a status kind of meeting, regular sort of status meeting, that you've always got something that you can kind of pull out and engage people with that's going to be a little bit more interesting and worthwhile. And by the way, if you do that a few times, just kind of unexpectedly, so not to make every meeting super heavy, but you've always got kind of, if you pull out something interesting every once in a while, your meetings, you'll be leveraging operant conditioning in your meetings, which is the same thing that makes casino slot machines so compelling, which is that you're never sure when you're going to get a payout and how big the payout's going to be. So by having something that you can occasionally drop into a meeting that's really cool or fun or different or dynamic, you will eventually train your meeting participants that there might be an Easter egg or there might be an aha moment in that meeting, and make them more likely to show up, to participate, and to be engaged if there's a variable reward in there.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because it's really, really true. Interval scheduling, especially random interval scheduling, is absolutely the most powerful. It's why we are addicted
Random
to.
fun.
Yeah, it's why it's so awesome for us, because we get addicted to it. It's why we like to go fishing, even though it's really not fishing. It's not catching, it's fishing. It's a whole different thing. It's the reason why we do those things, because we know it's going to happen. We just not sure when, which makes us keep coming back for more. You list a number. By the way, I just wanted to say how much. First, I love the whole book, but I really love this section of cognitive biases.
Oh yeah, I know you would.
And the part that I loved best about the way you set this up is not only tell us what the bias is, but then you tell us how to use it and how to put it into a talk, and which is just brilliantly done. By the way, I just loved what you did there. Is there? I think first of all, people, when they think of biases, we think of it negative often, and it can be. But you're using, we have these biases. It's just a reality of what it is. We have these biases, and let's take advantage of them as a public speaker or when we're speaking, because you can.
Yep.
Is there one or two that you go, oh man, these two are my favorite, or this one's my favorite?
Yeah. Okay. So most important one in persuasion, I always think, is anchoring. Okay.
Mhm.
Now anchoring bias is very, very important. And so the simple definition, the one I use in the book, is you walk into a store, you see the price on an item. It says the regular price is $50. Today it's discounted by 50%. So it's only $25. You're like, wow, that's a great deal, right? if the normal price is always like $27.50, then I've managed to pull one over on you, right? I anchored you. Anchoring is being attached to the first thing that you see and then comparing everything else against it. I anchored you to $50 because that was the first price that you saw. And I said, that's the normal price. So then you're going to compare everything I tell you based on the anchor from the first thing that I tell you. So when preparing something that's persuasive, and especially when you're using stats or numbers, or you're trying to show like a set of data in a particular way, you need to think about how you anchor that data so that you're really presenting in the most interesting light. So I'll just give you an example from something that I'm working on right now. So 15% of US adult males in the United States say that they have no close friends. Now that's a terrible, terrible number, but also in and of itself, it's kind of like, well, is 15% that big? Like we know lots of loners, like, okay, 15% is kind of bad. Now I'm going to tell you that that number has grown by 500% in the last generation.
Mm.
So when I tell you the story in that way, it's 15%, you go, and then I tell you it grew by 500%. Now you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's a lot, no matter what that number is in that
Mm-hmm.
structure. And then I'm going to tell you the number is twice as large for people under 30. Those are all
Mm.
true, by the way, everything I
Mm.
just said.
Mm.
So now people under 30, men under 30, it's almost twice as many people say they don't have a single close friend.
Mm.
In order to make those numbers make sense, I have to give them to you in a particular order by starting with the 15% number.
Mm.
I have to begin with the 15% number. Because if I begin with the 30% number for men under 30, then I have trouble going back and telling you the 15%
Right.
number for
Right.
all men, because now that seems like, oh, that's actually okay. We've clearly got a problem with young people, but actually, I want to convey to you that we have a problem with all men and their friendships in the United States that
Right.
has been getting bigger. That's what I'm trying to say. So I've carefully chosen how I'm going to roll those statistics out in such a way that I've anchored you in one place, and then I'm going to shock you twice from
Right.
that initial anchor.
Which are some
Right?
ahas, right? Because those are
Yeah,
going to be
right, exactly.
right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But they're only interesting in comparison to that initial number. So I've got to kind of, if you think about it in kind of a chess way, I have to throw away one of that 15% number to your own internal mental model of, is that big or small? And then I'm going to explain to you that's actually a big problem.
Right.
So I think anchoring is super, super important, and something that that I think everybody is engaged with. And then I think if you're a professional public speaker, so this is someone who's getting paid to do public speaking, probably the most important other one is the optimism bias, right?
Yeah.
Which is generally speaking, I think generally speaking, this sounds kind of pat, but usually in public speaking, even if you're not a motivational speaker, so even if you're speaking on a topic, or an area of interest, people really do want an optimistic frame for
Yes.
the ending, and they're
Yep.
looking for that optimism from you. So
Right.
you can get dark in the middle. You can get real dark, and you can
Yeah.
go through all the kind of, sort of difficult kind of things. But you want to, at some point before the end of your talk, you want to pivot and really latch into people's bias towards optimism and hook into it and pivot in that sort of direction, because they will prefer that, and they will think better of you, and you will get better ratings for your talk, and you will be more likely to be asked back if, no matter what the topic is, you've given people some kind of optimistic you know vision for the future.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We've done an hour.
Amazing.
It's gone so
We're
fast.
really amazing, Jay. You and
It's
I.
yes,
Just
it's gone so fast, man. It really has.
Yeah,
It's
I
gone
know.
really, really
Yeah.
fast. Your book is the AHA method, communicating powerfully in time of distraction. If people want to get a hold of you, how should they do that? Especially if they want to hire you to speak, or they got more questions, maybe. What's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. It's super easy to find me because I'm like the only Gabe Zichermann anywhere. So literally in your social media platform of choice, whichever one you want, Gabe space ZI, and you will literally find me anywhere. But if you want to come to my website, gabezichermann.com, GABEZICHERMANN gabe.com. And I swear to God, if you just type the first like 7 letters of my name, you'll find me. Really easy.
That's awesome. You were great. Stay with me. Hey, folks, it's the show. You know what I say to you every week, right? You know what? You're in control of 3 things: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. I know that life can be tough. I know it can be dark at times, but you know what? The truth of the matter is those are 3 things you can always control: your attitude, your effort, and that's your excellence, and your resiliency. And that's if you can choose to get back up again. We all get knocked down, but you make the choice of whether you're going to get up. Do it because you're in control. Do it now. I'll be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book. It's going to be another great show. As I say to you all over the world, you had a lot of choices. You chose us. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Give us a positive thumbs up on YouTube. Give us a positive review wherever you listen to the show or watch it. As I say to you all over, you know what that is. Ciao, everybody.